What is it, my ducks and drakes? Welcome to the Credit Lake, and today we are reading chapters 9 and 10 of Tomorrow, a senior-sized fanfic by Bekka911. If you'd like to support the author or the book itself, go ahead and click the links in the description below that goes to both. There's also a link to a Google form where you could recommend fics for the future. I will take any fandom from any platform, written by anyone, basically. And with that being said, let's go on to chapter 9. Thomas summoned Patton first. This first thing Morality noticed was the red around the host's eyes. Thomas's face was pale, and so the tear marks were obvious enough. Guilt made Patton's stomach twist. He'd done this. With his anger and his stupid emotions and his relentless crying. "Are you okay?" Thomas asked very quietly. Patton looked at him. Looked at the glossy sheen of his tired brown eyes, looked at the utter lack of energy and positivity. Thomas always strived to remain positive. Patton always strived to remain positive. No, he said eventually, honestly. Thomas let out a breath and Patton straightened his shoulders. No, I'm not. But I swear you I will be. Patton, I'm not worried about me at the moment. I know that I'll be okay once you're okay. Okay? Thomas tried for a smile. When Patton just kept looking at him mournfully, he let it all fall flat. Look, I don't know what happened. My anxiety is all over the place. I can't logic my way out of this, and I'm being swamped with a range of negative feelings. I'm not angry, but I need to know what's happening. Ask Logan then, Thomas, because honestly, I don't know what's going on with me either. Thomas gave him a searching look, and Patton managed to twitch his lips. He wasn't really lying. Well, not completely. He knew theoretically that denial and deceit and repression had something to do with it, but he didn't understand his sudden aggression. Patton wasn't an aggressive person. He wasn't. Logan, Thomas called, and the relief was visible on his face when his logical side appeared almost instantly. Hey. Logan fixed his glasses slightly, giving Patton a quick once-over just to check he was okay. Thomas? He greeted calmly. I'm going to make the assumption and say that you summoned me to gain information about the current situation with Patton. Tech talk. Patton reminded him gently. Logan nodded his thanks, accompanied with a small smile. Thomas didn't question it. Is Virgil involved as well? The host asked, eyebrows furrowing slightly. I'm getting random spikes of anxiety. I almost had a panic attack before, and I wasn't even doing anything. Normally I would suggest summoning Virgil, but I believe it would be better for me to explain on his behalf, as he is currently, fragile. Logan didn't look at Patton. Morality felt it like a blow to the face. Starting from the beginning may be the best course of action here. Thomas, do you know much about us as sides? Do you know about the practicalities of us? Thomas shook his head, mutely. Logan continued. As you may have gathered, we can have our own sides as such. With Virgil, it was Derek. With Roman, it was Dylan. It cannot progress further. The line cannot continue. Derek cannot have his own side. Dylan cannot have his own side. The reason for this is simply because we are already a broken up personality. There is less of us to break up again into more sides. Therefore, Derek and Dylan represent one part of your personality, and hence cannot continue to split into more sides. Do you follow? So, because they're a split part of an already split side, they cannot manifest to their own side? Thomas checked. Logan nodded. Got it. Now, despite this, there is still a side of us, so they don't affect you. The effects they have on us, though, will affect you. Do you remember the fluctuations you felt previously? Thomas looked pale. Patton had to look away. I know I took anxiety pills. And I guess their effects were exaggerated to impossible levels because my personality is so exaggerated? Logan nodded again. With Virgil, I just felt jittery and suspicious. I wouldn't talk to Joan for a while, couldn't even look at them. My anxiety was all over the place. I could happily walk across a busy road and not care, but after you took the pills away and their heightened effects wore off, I was too anxious to even open a packet of biscuits. Virgil's own emotions and responses were fluctuating, hence why you were all over the place, Logan said. But you didn't feel another presence. Thomas shook his head. The same would be for Roman, yes? We all saw the result of his whole breakdown, but I don't feel heightened doubt. It's the same for you? In the sense. It's the same for you, Logan, Patton said, and his voice burned his throat. He'd done this. He was the reason this conversation was happening. When you and Virgil were fighting, I bet Thomas felt the effects of your rising stress levels, but wasn't affected by the specifics of what you two were fighting about. Logan gave him a softened look. Yes, Patton, that is correct. For once, the praise didn't fill Patton with warmth. Logan looked back at his host, and Patton's shoulders slumped. Thomas, that is what is happening here. Patton is dealing with his own denial and repressive behaviors, and his unsteady emotions are affecting you. Deceit is also playing a small part, in that merely his presence will shake you and force you off balance. Patton, understandably, lashed out because of his turbulent emotions, and Virgil reacted negatively. That is all. Thomas gave Patton a gentle, searching look, lips pulled down. Pat, you okay, buddy? Patton smiled tiredly. I'm very emotional, kiddo, he said. I'm sorry we're affecting you like this. It's hard to control ourselves sometimes. Hey, Thomas held his hands up and smiled warmly. No blame or judgment from me. Just want to make sure everything's okay and everyone's happy. Then we can all start working together again and move forward. A sudden rush of love swelled in Patton's chest. Warmth spread down his arms and soothed his skin. Something close to contentment settled in him. And Patton tried to push some of it to Thomas. When his host relaxed mutely and his smile widened, Patton assumed he was successful. God, he loved his host. Love can be a poison, Patton. You're going to be betrayed by someone you trust, Patton. They don't trust you, Patton. Patton let the cozy feelings in his chest pull him away from the thoughts that plagued him, and for a moment, a shining moment, he was unconditionally happy. They are going to betray you, Patton. Chapter 10. When Virgil appeared on the stairs, Patton almost burst into tears. Anxiety looked paler than usual. It was easy to tell it wasn't his makeup, and his face was drawn a blank. What's up, Thomas? Thomas looked at Patton, unsure. Patton tried to look encouraging as he nodded, but Thomas winced, so maybe he didn't do a good job of it. I need you guys to sort this out, Thomas said, voice gentle. This constant conflict isn't good for me. I'm sorry, Virgil, Patton burst out, unable to hold it back. God, he hated this. He hated fighting with his boy. I didn't mean to shout at you, and I didn't mean the horrible things I said, I promise. I don't know what's wrong with me. Nothing's wrong with you, Pat, Virgil said quietly. That just made Patton feel worse. I know, he admitted, staring down at his hands tearfully. Stupid emotions. They made him feel like a child sometimes. Or maybe I don't. I'm confused. Virgil shuffled slightly and sighed, flicking his eyes over to Logan briefly and nodding. Patton? He said, almost hesitantly. Patton, it's okay. I forgive you. You're hurting, okay? Remember when I was hurting? I said some bad things to you then, and you forgave me. It's just like that. Patton shook his head. You weren't listening to deceit. Thomas gasped. A clenched jaw is all that gave away Virgil's contempt for the snake. Paddon, the anxious side said through gritted teeth. I'm not mad at you for talking to Deceit. I'm furious at Deceit for daring to come near you. He knows that he's not supposed to. Virgil, Logan admonished very, very quietly. Thomas said in a small voice, Deceit? You guys talk to Deceit? How is this all falling apart so quickly? Paddon wished it was a bad dream, wished that he could wake up now and find everything was okay. He didn't want to be here, listening to the waver in Thomas's voice or seeing the shakiness in Virgil's hand, or watch Logan look at everyone like he understood. Paddon hated it. He hated it. No, kiddo, he said heavily, turning his attention away from Virgil. Look, Thomas, this whole thing is my fault. I'll get it under control. I promise. I'm not for being a problem in the first place. Paddon, no. Virgil? Paddon didn't even attempt to smile as the anxious side frowned at him. I'm sorry I betrayed your trust. Paddon sank out. Once, being in his room had wiped away Paddon's bad feelings. He'd been able to use it as a refuge, as a haven, his happy place. Now his room was sad. Angry feelings amplified them and bounced them back on him. The negativity swelled like a wave and Paddon was drowning. He was drowning and all he wanted to do was lay down and curl up in bed with the others by his side and watch a Disney movie, because that had been the only time he'd felt whole and happy in so long. At first, he'd been dealing with Thomas's heartbreak. Now he was dealing with his own. Roman's room was bright and lovely, and Paddon hated it. Oh, he knew that Roman had worked unbelievably hard to make it that way. He knew that Dylan had left his mark, and that these walls had been gray and broken once. Roman had admitted in a moment of quiet, late at night. Paddon had been proud of him then. That pride was swallowed by a bitter hate now, and Paddon scowled. He was so angry. It felt like a toxin in his veins and it burned, but Paddon found it strangely soothing. The anger was blanketing, and for once, he just didn't care. With his anger came apathy. Apathy provided an excuse. Paddon could finally say all those negative things without being called a dark side. It was such a horrible thing to think, but it was true. Paddon could let all his negativity out, be angry for a while, and then he'd say he got over his repression and denial and things would be back to normal and he wouldn't have ruined his friendships. God, Paddon was such a bad person. He laid on Roman's bed, curling up among the pillows, the anger in him that withered and squirmed and snarled, but Paddon just let his body be heavy as he sank down into the mattress and took a shuddering breath. He didn't sleep. He couldn't. But when he disappeared back in his own room, some of that anger died. Roman wrinkled his nose when he walked in his room. It smelled like sour citrus, like oranges dissolved in vinegar. Huh. Strange. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode. I absolutely love this book. It's my favorite. I keep saying that, but it's so good. I love it so much. This is, in fact, a good book, and if you want to support the author, you could do so with the links in the description below. Once again, a reminder that my Google form is down there if you'd like to recommend a fic for the future. Also, there is social media links if you'd like to support me through Discord, Twitter, TikTok. I mostly do Broadway stuff now if you're interested in theater and Broadway. I still want to do Senior Sides cosplays. It's just not a good thing for me to do while doing 4 shows at once when it comes to school. Yeah. There's also a link to my Etsy shop where you could get beaded things. I do customs, so Senior Sides is always an option for something to be made. And once again, thank you so much for watching, and much like Paddon trying to hold it together in front of his host, do your best.